The biggest lie in the personal development industry is that knowledge is power. It is. It's just you feel like you got points because you signed up for a seminar or a webinar, you bought a book and it sits on your shelf, and it becomes shelf help instead of self-help because it just sits there, right? But it doesn't become, the truth is, what people don't tell you is all the podcasts, coaching, conferences, online programs, none of it works unless you work, right? Is that fair to say? Like you can't read a book on doing like push-ups and get benefit from that. It just doesn't work, right? So you have to do the work. So I'm asking myself, how can I use this? And I'm coming up with all these ideas. That's the creativity part. And then I'm asking, why must I use this? Because if it's not a must, you're not going to do it because you have plenty of other things to do. Is that fair? Because there's a success formula you capture on the left side of your page: head, heart, hands. You could think about things in your mind, set goals in your head and affirmations, KPIs, your objectives, but if you're not acting with your hands and you're procrastinating, raise your hand if you ever procrastinated before. Right? All of us. If there's a gap between your head and your hands, check in with the second H, which is your heart. Right? The emotion. We do things emotionally. We are emotional creatures. We're not logical, we're biological. Dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, endorphins, we're this chemical soup, and so we want to be able to activate that. So head, heart, hands, another way of putting it are our eyes. Information, that's good, great, but sometimes you can listen to a podcast, it's a lot of information, but there's no inspiration to use it. Fair? But sometimes you can listen to a speaker or learn something and it's inspiring, but you don't know what to do. Right? Is that fair? So you have information, you have inspiration, and then you have implementation, where you're doing it. And I feel like when you get all three I's together, you have the most powerful I, which is integration. That's my goal for all of you, is that when you read something, you listen to something, you learn something, it becomes part of who you are. It's integrated. Here, here, and here. And then you have an alignment, and how it performs is, it looks like magic to people.
Thank you. I'm honored to be with you today for your commencement from one of the finest universities in the world. Truth be told, I never graduated from college, and this is the closest I've ever gotten to a college graduation. Today, I want to tell you 3 stories from my life. That's it. No big deal. Just 3 stories. The first story is about connecting the dots. I dropped out of Reed College after the first 6 months, but then stayed around as a drop-in for another 18 months or so before I really quit. So why'd I drop out? It started before I was born. My biological mother was a young, unwed graduate student, and she decided to put me up for adoption. She felt very strongly that I should be adopted by college graduates, so everything was all set for me to be adopted at birth by a lawyer and his wife. Except that when I popped out, they decided at the last minute that they really wanted a girl. So my parents, who were on a waiting list, got a call in the middle of the night asking, "We've got an unexpected baby boy. Do you want him?" They said, "Of course." My biological mother found out later that my mother had never graduated from college and that my father had never graduated from high school. She refused to sign the final adoption papers. She only relented a few months later when my parents promised that I would go to college. This was the start in my life. And 17 years later, I did go to college. But I naively chose a college that was almost as expensive as Stanford. And all of my working class parents' savings were being spent on my college tuition. After 6 months, I couldn't see the value in it. I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life, and no idea how college was going to help me figure it out. And here I was, spending all of the money my parents had saved their entire life. So I decided to drop out and trust that it would all work out okay. It was pretty scary at the time, but looking back, it was one of the best decisions I ever made.
Sometimes I wonder how easy it is for me to describe all this all over again. And somebody has rightly said that when you share your story and it doesn't make you cry, that means you have healed. Those 2.5 months in the hospital were dreadful. I will not make up stories just to inspire you. I was at the verge of despair. One day, doctor came to me and he said, well, I heard that you wanted to be an artist, but you ended up being a housewife. I have a bad news for you. You won't be able to paint again because your wrist and your arm are so deformed, you won't be able to hold a pen again. And I stayed quiet. Next day, doctor came to me and said, your spine injury is so bad, you won't be able to walk again. I took a deep breath and I said, it's all right. The very next day, doctor came to me and said, because of your spine injury and the fixation that you have in your back, you won't be able to give birth to a child again. That day, I was devastated. I still remember, I asked my mother, why me? And that is where I started to question my existence. Why am I even alive? What's the point of living? I cannot walk, I cannot paint, fine, I cannot be a mother. And we have this thing in our heads, being women, that we are incomplete without having children. I am going to be an incomplete woman for the rest of my life. What's the point? People are scared. They think I will get divorced. What is going to happen to me? Why me? Why am I alive? We all try to chase this tunnel. We all do this because we see light in the end of the tunnel, which keeps us going. My dear friends, in my situation, there was a tunnel that I had to roll on, but there was no light. And that is where I realized that the words have the power to heal the soul. My mother said to me, this too shall pass. God has a greater plan for you. I don't know what it is, but He surely has. And in all that distress and grief, somehow or the other, those words were so magical that they kept me going. I was trying to put that smile on my face all the time, was hiding. It was so hard to hide the pain, which was there. But all I knew was that if I will give up, my mother and my brothers will give up too. I cannot see them crying with me. So what kept me going was, one day I asked my brothers, I know I have a deformed hand, but I'm tired of looking at these white walls in the hospital and wearing these white scrubs. I'm getting tired of this. I want to add more colors to my life. I want to do something. Bring me some colors. Bring me some small canvas. I want to paint. So the very first painting I made was on my deathbed, where I painted for the very first time.